Good morning. Welcome to the Shirley and Shirley Show. Today, my guest is Angie Sapik. She is running for the 25th Senate District in northern Wisconsin. For it covers 8 counties, which is unbelievable. And she was a former assemblywoman, and she's also written a book for the good of the party. Welcome to the show today, Angie. And our beginning got a little bit cut because I had to work on a couple different programs here. So we're going to start off with us just talking. Thank you. Have a good day. And thanks for listening to the Shirley and Shirley Show. Because, if you were my assemblywoman and then all of a sudden you're not, I mean, it's just bizarre. So I know that you stepped aside and did not run for assembly again, and you did it and you wrote a book, which I think is really cool. Number
Thank
one, I
you.
mean, I know we're here to talk about your Senate seat and all, but I want to make sure we talk about this a little bit. I haven't had a chance to finish it or read it all. I'm like way behind on my reading. For the good of the party. And why did you name it that? Just out of curiosity.
So there's a couple of things that happened when I decided to not run for that assembly seat after the lines had changed. One of them was I thought I should really try to help people understand exactly what this process is. And when I was in office, I also made people know no matter what is happening, good or bad, I will make sure that you know what's going on. Because for the 20 years previous, we just didn't really know what our representatives were doing. And also, that's a cultural shift because now we've got more social media. Politicians are out there and they're doing more videos and advertising, and they're really working harder to keep their name out there, for one, and keep people informed on what's going on. I thought in this process, because I was somebody who was new to politics at an an official capacity, I thought I want to make people, or I want to help people understand exactly what the entire process looks like. And when I was campaigning, the campaign got to be so ugly from all of these outside organizations. And when you start to run for a political office that's of that stature, it's a pretty big deal. It's a large undertaking, maybe a little larger than I had anticipated. But when when you're in a situation like that and you see all the things that are happening, it's like, I really wish that people had a way to understand what this process looks like, from the campaign to getting your office set up, to the bills that you're working on, to the lobby groups that you're working with, and, the friendships that you make and the friendships that you lose, because it is absolutely inevitable that you will lose friendships if you run for a position, like I said, of this stature. So I thought, what better way than to put it all on paper, get a memoir out, and also it helps people to fully understand who I am. So when I left the assembly, I didn't run for that next term, that 2-year term, and I spent my time writing and getting this book out there so that people could really in print see everything about me that they could possibly want to know, and maybe some things that they don't. But I thought if there's no better way for people to understand me and to understand the process than for me to put it out there in my own words.
Well, and the other thing too that I'm going to point out is that you are so far north compared to somebody who's way down south, and they really don't understand the state of Wisconsin when it comes to that, how the Northland is. And you were how far were you from like going to Madison?
It's a 5-hour drive for me.
One way, a 5-hour drive one way for her to
Yep.
do that. So and then you spend the day or whatever, a couple of days in session, and you had small children and a husband, and you're working in your family business. So it had to be extremely difficult. I can tell you just as a someone who ran for assembly, and it was the 74th at the time, and you probably served with Janet Bewley. And she was she ended up moving into Bob Jouk's Senate seat, and they'd had that for so many years, unfortunately. And fortunately, I mean, I give them credit. They worked hard, but that district is so large. When you say 8 counties in the Northland is like a state. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. Like from my house, when I go down to Amory, that's a probably 2-hour, 15-minute drive. So,
Mhm.
and that the same thing if I go from my house in Lake Nebagaman all the way to Iron County. I
Right.
mean, it's one of the largest districts, I would say, probably in the continental United States.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think it's like when we talk about that congressional district, the 7th congressional district. I mean, what part of 26 counties? That's
Oh,
crazy.
it
It's
is
almost a third of the state.
enormous. It's
I know.
enormous. And
How
I
can you
thought,
possibly
and
do
this
that?
is So one of the things about me and about election season is I really love elections, and I really love getting to know all of the candidates and where they come from and why they're running. And I this congressional race is very interesting to me.
I
So
totally
I
agree. I'm
just
on your side.
with a
It's weird.
district this large, I'm so surprised that so many people are running for it because I'm not sure that all the candidates fully grasp that this is Tom Tiffany's seat, and he spends 155 days a year in Washington, D.C. That doesn't include travel time. And then you're in your district and you have, what is it? Is it 26 counties? It's
Yes,
enormous.
it is.
And you're
It's
doing
enormous.
every
And
Lincoln dinner and,
yep.
every Reagan event. And you are spread so thin. And
Mhm.
you still have to prioritize your family life also. So
Correct.
I it's gonna be really hard for someone to fill Tom Tiffany's shoes because I don't remember in my lifetime having someone in that position or any position really who's worked as hard as him.
I am going to agree with you. I loved it when he got the position, and he's done a good job. And he worked his way up too. He was in assembly. Then and he ran a couple times and lost in assembly, and then he ended up getting the Senate seat, and he did a fabulous job. I'm very impressed with him, and I wanted him to run for governor a long time ago. And then he ends up going to Congress, which was great because he's a great representative. I mean, Tom is pretty straight and narrow, and there's times that I haven't agreed with everything he's done, and I reach out and he tells me why, and I understand it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's how the process is supposed to work. And that's what you're talking about in your book. And I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to do that because literally, I know the sacrifice and I know the friendship. I know that I lost friends the minute they found out that I was running as a declared, Republican, and they ran, and then also found out that I was pro-life. That people moved away from me in the church. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah.
These
I
are
the
people I've
same
known
thing happened
forever.
to me.
Yeah,
I wrote about this in the book. I had a friend of mine come we used to get together, once every few months and try to, whether we go have a cocktail or we take the kids out on some fun adventure or whatever it may
sure.
be. But she came to my office and it wasn't anything surprising. We were just going to go to grab a cocktail and catch up for half an hour. And our entire interaction was so uncomfortable and so stiff. And we were about halfway through, and then she started drilling me about my pro-life stance, and I thought, this is something that we've never talked about before. It wasn't ever something that was, like a catalyst for our friendship by any means, and I knew the second that we both walked out of there that we would never speak again. I knew that relationship was over, and
Yeah.
it was, and that was it, and I thought, it's so funny that you could be friends with someone for, upwards of 25 years or maybe even longer, and just because you're running for this position, all of a sudden these things sort of come to fruition and then they matter. It's like, well, I've been the same person the whole time. So, I can't change my values just because I'm running for this position, I'm a pro-life candidate. This is just where I've always landed. So I don't have any apologies for that.
No, and I totally understand it because it happened exactly to me. Like I said, I think my husband was so shocked because these people have been friends, been to our house for, Lent, and we used to have a seafood fest during Lent, and it was like, we had a blast, and all these people came, and then all of a sudden they were scooting away. They were sitting on a different pew. My husband's like, What's going on? You know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, I can tell you what's going on, but you're not going to like it. So
The
I
writing is
certainly.
on the wall, and
Yes, and
it is what
it's
it is.
sad, but the thing is that that's part of what we are, is we stand by our principles, and that's who you are, and that's what made you who you are, and then your friend is who she is, and that's fine, and that's
And
my
I
thing is
respect that.
me too,
Everyone is
exactly.
entitled to have their own opinion, and, I guess it depends on what is your basis of friendship? Is it your political beliefs? Do you only surround yourself with people who feel exactly the same as you? And I really pride myself as being someone who doesn't do that. I have friends lifelong friends who are more of the traditional Democrat, but Democrat
Sure.
friends for sure. And I've got obviously a pretty large Republican network. And I appreciate that everybody has the right to have their own opinion. And I just happen to be running for a position where my opinion changes the shape of the state and the culture of the area by the laws that we create and the laws that we support. And, you know, that's just sort of the nature of the beast, I suppose.
Yeah, it's called politics, right? It's
Mhm.
exactly what it is, and some people
It's very
understand it just like
political.
oh, it is so much more political than I would have ever even dreamed of, and I've been involved in it for a very long time. So I
Mhm.
respect the fact and here's one thing I'll say, anyone who puts their name on a ballot earns some kind of respect from me because it is not an easy thing to do, because you are setting aside your time and you're committing to people in a whole district. So you're committing to 8 counties that you're going to
Yeah.
run your tail end off to win and then to represent them properly. And you're not representing when you're elected, you don't represent just Republicans. And that's what I think people forget too is we've become this tribalistic kind of people now. And I don't really like that. I like having friends that are all very diverse because it helps me learn. It helps me learn. And then it helps me even understand more why I am who I am. So it's very
Right.
interesting. So I appreciate you
Sometimes
doing
it
that.
helps solidify my stance.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. It does, doesn't it? I
it does.
admire yeah, I admire your strength and your will. I'm gonna call it your will because I've seen it. I've seen it in action, and I think you do a fantastic job, and the Northland would be very, very fortunate to elect you. So, I know when you served before, and, maybe you can tell us what was maybe one of the favorite bills that you worked on that helped North?
Oh, so this is one of the things that just came up, and Representative Barb Dietrich just she has been really hammering this issue. And this is not having men in women's sports and in women's spaces. And I support that legislation. We've sort of been hammering this idea home. And it feels like the culture is shifting a little bit more toward okay, this really is ludicrous. Why are we allowing this to happen? And then there just recently in the last few months, there was the strongest women's championship of the world and a man won that championship.
I
And
saw
the
that.
woman who Yes, and the woman who got 2nd place was like, "Are we done?" And she jumped off the podium and she was absolutely irate, and she absolutely should be irate. Yeah,
Absolutely.
this is something that I think is just so common sense, and I have a hard time even understanding the arguments against it, that we can allow men in women's spaces. I just think it's not safe, it's not fair, especially for these young women. You're talking about high school age students. I went to I toured Superior High School, and this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and this issue was really just starting to come to a head, and we were in the pool area, and I was looking at all of the records, and they had it split men versus women for all of these different events, and I wish I would have taken a picture of it because it's really a perfect example of, the ludicrousness of having men and women's sports, but if you look at that exact record list of men versus women in all of these swimming categories, the men's numbers always beat the women's numbers. It was
Of
all of the
course.
boys' numbers were always better than the women's, and these are the all-time records forever, and it's like, this is just so black and white to me, and I think that that's something that we just have to keep pushing, and once we get a Republican governor, which I think we are going to win this governorship in this next election, and I think that we've got an opportunity where the Republicans, and myself included, have spent time writing these bills that we know that Evers is not going to sign, but we've perfected the language in these bills over the last 2 terms of Evers' governorship, so that when we do have Republican all the way through and we have a Republican governor, then we're ready. We're ready,
Yeah.
and we have a plethora of bills that we've been drafting and creating and perfecting for years now. So, when it comes to the elections, we have to win the elections, but when it comes to the representation by the Republicans, we are 100% ready.
Oh, that sounds absolutely fantastic, and I'm very excited to see that happen because our state has been moving in such a very strange direction, and they seem to put up so many walls, that it's very difficult to keep on climbing them, if you know what I mean. Every time you turn around, and then the Supreme Court, and I think it's more of an activist. I mean, we have activists now legally elected to Supreme Court. People who said exactly how they were going to vote before they even had their election. So I think,
That is a great point. That is
yeah,
absolutely a great point. Yep.
it's aggravating as heck when you know the process, and you do.
Right.
And
Mhm.
it seems like we call that a nonpartisan race. It is nothing but a partisan race, and it's disgusting at this point because it should be following the law. That's what your job is when you're
Oh,
elected to
yeah.
Supreme Court, is to
As it
follow
is
the law
written, not
as it
as
is
it's
written.
written, not as it is interpreted. And I think that these laws have been written in such a way that they should be more ironclad that they are than they are. But we're really coming back into this era of it depends on what your definition of is. Remember when during the
What
Clinton
is a
era?
woman? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but now it's, we're dissecting everything in such a way that we're losing the message. So if you take one single word or misinterpret one hyphen or whatever it is, then all of a sudden you're rewriting laws because you're interpreting rather than doing what the law very clearly states. But that's a real problem that's happening, and I think that's another cultural thing that's happening, not just in Wisconsin, but across the US, where a great example is the 400-year property tax veto, that line item veto
Mhm,
that Evers did while I
mhm.
was in office. I
Yeah,
He raised the ability for property taxes to go up for 402 years, and this is when property taxes are already constantly creeping up. I mean,
yeah.
at this point, we just had an event in Ashland, and I can't remember if it was Josh Schoeman who's running for governor or who said it, but someone said, "How many of you had property taxes go down?" And in this room filled with probably 150 people, I think 3 people raised their hand.
Wow.
And that is something that is absolutely ludicrous. We are taxing people out of their homes. You've got veterans on fixed income who are
Mhm.
retired or disabled, and you're raising property taxes. How is someone possibly supposed to compensate for, a 30% increase in their property taxes in 1 year, and then the next year, maybe it goes up 5%, maybe it goes up 10%. But when you're talking about someone who's on a fixed income and they're retired and they're in their home, you can't have 20 years of increases on these people. You're taxing them out of their homes in a market where the housing market itself is already a, a real disaster with rules and regulations. And we've got all of these issues with the ability to build more apartment complexes and things like that. So I just
Yeah,
I really feel, and I got the same bill. My property tax bill went up as well, and
sure.
I just really feel for these people who are electing people into office, and they really need their help. And, we've got Republicans in the Senate, Republicans in the Assembly, and they're doing everything that they can to help. And then you've got a governor who just uses a line item veto and destroys everything that the Republicans are trying to accomplish. So this next governor's race is really gonna be a big point for Wisconsin
Yeah.
history and for what's gonna happen over the next 4 to 8 years because we've got to do something, and we've got proof time and time again that the Democrats are ruining it. So any step forward that the Republicans take, the Democrats just kick it back, and we have to just we have to get through this election, and we have to win, and we have to help the people of Wisconsin because we can't live like this anymore.
I totally agree with you, and I think part of my frustration is also the fact that, and by the way, my taxes went up too, and I don't mind sharing mine with anyone because it's very frustrating to me, and it drives me absolutely crazy. And one of the parts that drives me even more crazy is, let's just take this. How about referendums? So then you get taxed even more. And I love the referendums that keep coming from the school districts. And I'm sorry, but where I live, 70% of the kids cannot read on grade level, and I think that's pretty much statewide. And to me, in the private sector, and you know this as well because you work for a business, I owned
Mhm.
a business, and if I didn't do my job, I would be fired. So why are we not firing them? Actually, the governor right now, the sitting governor, people, was the DPI instructor for many years, the
Right,
superintendent of schools, and he has failed in every way you can possibly imagine. Then he put a 400-year tax on us, like Angie just said, and the point there is that that's going to go to our grandkids, great grandkids, and great grandkids. I mean, it's ridiculous. 400 years, and the Supreme Court upheld it, which blows my flipping mind.
right.
So you're correct. We have
Well,
to win.
there's so many different things that happen with, with the school district and DPI. And one of the things that came up this year, which the media has not touched on hardly at all, whereas if it was on the Democrat side, it would have been blown up everywhere. But there are over 200 teacher sexual misconduct
Oh,
and grooming cases that they had hidden under the rug until after Jill Underly was elected again. And it was like, if only they were transparent enough to not just try to win elections where they're stuffing this stuff under the rug, but we're talking about sexual misconduct with children. And what's more important than protecting our kids? I can't think of anything more important than that. And if you're the kind of person who's pushing this sort of thing under the rug so that you can win elections, I absolutely shame on you. It's really
I
terrible. Something like this
that
is even
is
possible to happen.
it's disgusting. And honestly, when I read that, I mean, like touching their lower backs and rubbing their thighs, I was blown flipping away that these teachers are not in jail, let alone some of them are still teaching. That blew my mind
Well,
too. So,
I've learned that a lot of cases they said, okay, well, we will document this and we'll put it away and we're not going to fire you, but you have to leave. So they're giving these teachers the option to just go find another job somewhere else because it's like a public education NIMBY, right? Like not in my backyard. Like you can't teach here, but we don't mind if you go down to Milwaukee. Oh, what a terrible precedent is that? That
it's
it's
horrible.
not okay
It
for you to
reminds
do
me
this
of the
here, but we're just going to push you over there, and then we don't have to worry
yeah,
about it anymore.
yeah, reminds you of the Catholic Church many years ago in the 80s, and that was a wrong thing to do, and they all know it, and they paid for it too. So I
Yeah,
believe our
it's a
children
terrible
are
thing.
paying for it.
Well,
I believe our
and we
children
put
are paying
in
for it right now.
well in my term in the assembly, we put in, I believe it was an extra $1 billion into public education. So there's this idea that the Republicans are not sponsoring public education. It's like, well, we are. And but there's also a precedent that comes with it that you can't just receive all this money from the state and not produce results. We have to have kids be able to read. And I don't know that this is so much of an issue in northern Wisconsin as the numbers are skewed down towards Milwaukee. So
Mhm.
I would have to look up and see exactly what that is. But we do have some great school systems here that I completely support. But we've got like Northwestern School here in Maple, Wisconsin is going to go to referendum this spring. And they need a new roof on their middle school. There's a plethora of different things that they need. And their current referendum that they're in right now is expiring. So there's an opportunity for taxes for this area to go down unless they sign this new referendum. And then the projection is that the school referendum wouldn't impact your taxes because that same referendum would just compensate for the one that's expiring or the one that's sunsetting. So, I'm not against having a referendum. I think that when your community needs something, it's your community's job to come together and decide whether or not it's time to support such a thing. So, we at the state level, you can't put a new roof on every single school in the entire state. You have to prioritize the kids and the education. And I I think that referendum really is a positive thing, and it's a good way for the community to come together and say, this is what's important to us, and we want to protect and support our kids and our teachers. And you know, just a little more local accountability. I don't see a problem with that at all. And if my taxes are gonna go up a little bit because I'm supporting my local school system, I don't have a problem with that. If my property taxes are going up because my Democrat governor decided to do a line item veto just to make a point that he can, I have a problem with that. So, trying to keep a little more priority in our communities and in our local school system, I think is a positive thing, and I don't have any qualms about local referendums at all, really.
I think it can be a positive thing, but I think my problem with it is that if they don't pass it the first time, because the voters voted it down, then they bring it back and they bring it back and they bring it back, and I think that's wrong. I think we need to have something that they cannot continue to bring it back when voters say no. If voters say no, there's a reason for it. Most of the
Right.
time, it's a pretty good reason, and I think that's part of our problem is that in the schools will just keep on doing it. And here's the other thing about the schools: declining enrollment is gigantic, and
Oh,
but
that's a
yet I never,
huge problem.
yeah, and I never see declining hiring. I always see, you know, I just see declining
Because
enrollment. And I also think
yeah,
education system in this state is a big giant bucket with a whole lot of holes in it. We keep pouring more and more money and it doesn't work. And so,
yeah,
if we were honestly, if our kids were reading at 70% were reading on grade level, Cheryl would be like, hey, we got a good thing going here. I'll help him get to 80 or 90% with some tax dollars. But when you're only 30% are reading on grade level. So then that means if a kid isn't reading on grade level and he's in third grade and they move him up to fourth, well, now he's not reading on fourth grade level either, nor third grade. So what
right,
happens? If you can't read, you can't succeed. And
right.
I'm not downing teachers. Please, out there, know that. I am not downing teachers. I really am not. I respect teachers and I know they have a lot to deal with. But I am saying there's something wrong and we need to learn how to fix it, not just keep doing the same thing. Insanity. What is that? Doing the same thing over and over again and think it's going to change. And it doesn't.
Well,
And
and it's just, everybody wants to support teachers and support public school as much as you can. So I'm with you. I have 100% support teachers. My kids they're 8 and 9. So,
right.
I mean, they're right in the middle of their elementary school years. So, I mean, my kids' teachers are helping my kids learn how to read, and they're doing math, and they're helping them put on their snow pants. So, like,
Exactly.
it's a very, very difficult, but I believe a very fun job also because, we've got a
Yeah.
good system, like, here for sure. But yeah, I there's gotta be a way for both parties to get together and find a way to support education, support teachers, but do so in a way that, calculates out some results without depleting the entire fund from, the whole state of
Correct.
Wisconsin with no results. There just has to be
Right.
some level of accountability there.
And not attacking private schools or charter schools and things like that. I just think that's ridiculous too. Vouchers. I mean, if somebody lives in a city like, let's say, Milwaukee, and they want to send their child to a different school, they should be able to do that, and their tax dollars should be able to go there. So some of this
Yep.
stuff is just seems crazy. And when you live in the Northland, of course, it's very different because it is spread out. I mean, how long do your kids spend on a bus going to school and coming home?
Oh, they get out at 3 it's probably an hour and 10 minutes from the time they get out to the time that they get home. So,
And these are young kids, it's
yeah.
exhausting day.
Oh,
I
it
mean,
is.
these
It's a
kids
very
start their
long
day
day.
so early. Yes, it is. I mean, it's a long day for like humans, adults like us, but for the kids, that's gotta be a super long day.
I
So,
will
yeah,
say that my kids
I'm
love their bus driver, Tony, though. She is an absolute 10.
bus drivers are rock stars in the whole world.
They
They really are.
are.
I know, I
They
give them a
really
lot of
are.
credit. They deal with
I
a lot
drive
of
down the
stuff.
road in a snowstorm with my kids in the car, and my anxiety is through the roof, and I think, I can't imagine driving a bus with, like, 35 children on it when you've got a foot of snow on the ground. My
And
hat's
they're all
off to them.
talking, they're all talking
Yes!
and laughing and, yeah, I give them,
Not
hey,
a
they
care
get
in the
kudos.
world.
No, they just drive along and everybody loves them. The kids all love them. I think it's great. So
I
that's
do too.
fantastic. So
Well,
so a big plug for the bus drivers out there. Thank you.
yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, so Angie, I honestly think that you always fight hard, and I think that's something that talks about what your character is and what you stand for. And I appreciate that very much. And I think a lot of people out there do. And I know that you're working really hard, and it's early, but it's not that early. I mean, like
No.
you have to start. campaign, way in advance. And I know you got off to a pretty good start. So how are things going for you?
I think things are going really well. So we started out in October, and it's been, knocking on doors and meeting people and doing podcasts and going to like village board meetings and along with my county board seat. So I'm still on the county board for Douglas County right now. So once I'm not on the county board, then I'll be able to take that time and I'll be able to go, to Iron County and Ashland and go visit some more of those county board meetings that are scheduled the same time as mine. But I can't,
Oh, yeah.
leave
Yeah.
can't leave my beloved Douglas County board hanging because I'm
Mhm.
campaigning. This is what I was elected to do, so I'm there. But it's just it's positive. And one of those things that you sort of learn when you get into a campaign process, you go, you do social media, you do this, you do that. But really, when you meet people face to face and ask them what their concerns are, there's just no better way to get a feel for what people in Burnett County need or what people in Polk County need or Iron, because all of these areas are so, I mean, we're all northern Wisconsin, so there's a lot of things that are, like-minded issues. But there's a lot of things that are different when you go from one space to the next. So that on the ground work is really, I think, what's most impactful and what's most important because it helps me really understand, you know, what the needs are in this entire area because it's so much larger than what my assembly seat was.
Yeah, your assembly seat was what, maybe 3 counties?
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
3. So,
yeah,
which
and
is
the
great
now
because
Senate,
I have.
yeah,
Yeah, 'cause I
yeah,
have
that
Washburn and Burnett and Douglas. My home is Douglas County, and you go down to Grantsburg, and there are thousands of sandhill cranes down there, and it's like, you're not that far from Douglas County, but all of a sudden, it's very different down there, and their
mhm,
way of life is sculpted by their environment, so it's a little different than being next to Lake Superior, so, it's fun,
yeah, yeah,
it's the larger the area and the more people you get to know, the more you get to know your own state, and the same as when I was in the assembly, you talk to these different representatives in different areas, and I couldn't expect someone from Milwaukee to fully understand what we need in Lake Nebagaman. You
mhm,
have to shout from the rooftops that, the issues that you have there are very different than what we need here. And so that's why you need someone who has a strong voice and strong conviction who can go down there and say, at some point, I'm tired of talking about Milwaukee. I want to talk about Blueberry or Grantsburg or
yep,
Amory or,
yeah,
I mean,
yes, I
that's
agree, I think
we
that's
have to really
fantastic.
fight to put our name on the map.
Yeah, we really do, and the Northland really does kinda many times I always felt like it was left to the side, basically, kinda like the stepchild. I don't mean that bad, people, I just mean that it was like you don't get a lot of voices up there that will go down to Madison and testify, let's say, for instance, because they can't take off of work, they can't drive all that way, they can't do this, and so it's really difficult to get that,
Oh, it's
firestorm going.
yeah, it's very difficult. So it actually,
Mhm.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because I learned in my term in the assembly, and my kids were really little. So,
Yes.
it's a little different now because my kids are a little older now, but I I didn't fully understand the balance of trying to be the dugout mom, helping coach little league for my kids and being the wrestling mom where I'm down pounding on the mat and telling my kids, give them a half Nelson. But at the same time, I'm also working on this legislation. I am working my job in Superior, Wisconsin. I'm a produce broker by trade. So it's a, pretty heavy and I always wanna say taxing. It's a taxing position. It's a difficult job, and
Yeah, it's
so I
intense,
have
right.
all of these things on my plate at once, and, you know, it ended up that I couldn't balance all of it the way that I wanted to, and my buckets got depleted, but the one that really depleted the most was my job in onions because I started prioritizing my job in the assembly and I realized that that's really where my passion is these state politics and trying to help people and getting to know people and find out what everyone's concerns are. And I started to not pay attention to my career as much. And that's when I really learned about myself that this is the path for me. You know,
Mhm.
I want to help people. That's my number one goal is, I want to make sure that we don't turn into Minnesota. I want to make sure Wisconsin doesn't have this like exorbitant level of fraud and stealing taxpayer dollars. And I want to protect girls and I want to be a strong champion and advocate for women where, you know, we're changing the we're changing the requirements for insurance companies so that women are able to get a 3D scan mammogram. I mean, that scan itself saved one of my best friends from her from dying from her breast cancer. She had
Wow.
2 rounds of cancer and if she didn't have that 3D screen, they never would have caught it. So these are
Wow.
the things that I care about. These are, the things that I'm trying to champion and I'm trying to really put at the forefront, especially of my campaign and my time in office and just really solidify some real grounding on what the platform is and what I'm trying to accomplish. And because my priority has shifted almost entirely to this outside of my wrestling duties, of course, but I have decided to leave my job. So I am leaving my job and it's a pretty well paying position in a family business. I've had a long conversation with my brother about it, who's my boss, which is great because he's my best friend, which is also
That's
very
awesome.
positive in my life. But I decided that, come this spring, I'm gonna leave my job and I'm gonna go 100% into this campaign for the Senate seat because I truly believe and know that I'm the best person for this position. And I'm not able to do that and juggle all these things at once. You need to have someone who's able to walk away from their career and say, I really want to prioritize exactly this for Northern Wisconsin. And that's what I'm setting out to do.
Wow. After all of that, I don't know if there's much more I can say, Angie. I think that you are the right person for it. I felt that when you ran for assembly, you were like a dynamite that came out of nowhere, Lake Nabagaman. I mean, come on, you came out of nowhere and you won. You worked your tail end off and you did a great job. And I have no doubt that's exactly what you're going to do this time. And I admire the fact that you have set your priorities the way that you feel, the way that you think. I mean, you actually have a calling is what you have, is a calling. You have a calling to serve people, and I admire that to no end, especially, my true love is the Northland. I can't change that. And I just wanted to tell you thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for some of the sacrifices you have made already. Thank you for some of the friendships you have lost and some of them you have gained because I am certainly one of them. So I
Absolutely.
want I want you, and it is a strong one. It's not gonna change. I will help you in any way I possibly can. So please, why don't you tell people where they can find out more information about you and where they can donate, and then I'll let you go back to what you're doing, and when it comes time to do some doors, sister, call me.
I absolutely will. Again, everyone, if you're just popping in, my name is Angie Sapik. I'm running for state senate for the 25th district in northern Wisconsin. And if you would like to have a little more information about me, you can go to sapikforsenate.com or I have a Facebook page that's online on Facebook. I have an Instagram page also, and I recently started a TikTok page. So we're hitting this from all angles. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
everywhere.
Okay.
Very easy to
Well, great.
find.
Well, Angie, hang on there when we finish because I wanna make sure that this uploads because this is my first time doing it live on Podbean, so,
Nope, that's
thank
all
you.
good.
Yep. Thank you for joining me today. People, please find out more about Angie. And really, I purchased her book off of Amazon for the good of the party. And I am excited. I've just started digging into it. I'm very excited about reading it. And it's basically a story of sacrifice, friendship, and empowerment in the face of a polarized political climate. How true that is. So, Angie, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. And thank you all for listening to the Cheryl and Shirley Show. And I wish you a great day. Try to stay warm because it's awful cold right now in January in Wisconsin. It's the way it is for us, isn't it, Angie?
Yes, it is -31 by Friday, so
Ooh,
bundle up.
bundle up. All right. Well, take care and everyone have a good day. Thank you. All right. I paused it. The recording has paused. I'm not sure how to end it. I got to figure that out, but I will. So I think that was, I will. I think that was pretty good, huh?
Yeah, I think that was good. I got there's a couple of things that I had written down in front of me that I wanted to make sure to touch on,
Did you get
and yep, I caught just about everything except for the fact that I was an electorate for Donald Trump. That was the only
Oh,
other thing
shoot.
that I wanted to put out there, and I we get to talking, and then I forgot.
I know. Well, and I got it makes me I mean, I get a little passionate about some of it too. I mean, the boys and girls sports just blows my freaking mind because and I didn't even talk about this, but I was 13 when Title IX came around. I played fast pitch softball, I played volleyball, I played tennis in high school. And we had to like supply all of our own, like our socks, our shorts, everything. And
Sure,
that was one of the big fights back then. And I was one of these people that's kind of probably what started my whole passion in all political stuff was
sure.
that. Because I mean, I didn't really agree with some of these they called themselves feminists back then. They don't even know what freaking feminism is. And now, I mean, they were back then. They were really, they were really fighting for women to get in, to get the fair share that we needed. When we signed up to do, like when I was doing fast pitch softball at school, we had to sign up for the field. Well, if the boys decided they were going to practice, then we got booted. So
Yeah,
you'd
of
show up for
course.
practice and they would say, sorry, but we got the field.
Yeah,
And we're
yep.
like, wait a minute.
Wait a
This is
minute.
unfair. And
Wait a
we would even
minute.
get booted. We would even get booted by like the JV or the freshmen. I mean, we was like, sorry, we've got all the fields. There were 4 fields and they take one
Yeah,
of them.
yeah,
And
that's not right.
no, it wasn't right. And so we fought and we fought hard. I mean, I can remember literally carrying a sign around my school. My school was a city block. I went to a big school in a big city in Peoria, Illinois. And I just remember that. And I remember a picture. I still have the picture. And I actually had my finger in my mouth. It was in the newspaper. I was so embarrassed because I was
Well,
only like 13 and I was carrying a sign. It was